I never thought I'd be the kind of woman to sit here, at 79 years old, and tell strangers on the internet about the darkest chapter of my life. But I suppose secrets only grow heavier with time. Mine has been pressing down on my chest for more than 60 years. Maybe if I share it, someone out there will understand, maybe even forgive me for the choices I made, or had forced upon me. So, if you're listening, don't just scroll away. Hear me out. And if my story makes you cry, or makes you angry, or even makes you grateful for your own life, then do me a favor, leave a like, write me a comment. I can't get those years back, but maybe I can get a little piece of my voice back today. I was just 17 when my mama told me I was going to be married. Married. Can you imagine? I had barely finished high school, hadn't even gone to prom because we couldn't afford a dress. I still wore pigtails some days when I didn't feel like fixing my hair. I was just a girl, but in our little town in Florida, 1963, a girl didn't belong to herself. She belonged to her family, and her family belonged to survival. We lived in a sagging wooden house near the orange groves, the boards so thin you could hear the crickets and the neighbors both through the walls. My father had died in a fishing accident when I was 12, and Mama never forgave the world for it. She scrubbed motel floors for pennies, raised us on beans and cornbread, and every night she'd pray loud enough for us all to hear, "Lord, deliver us from poverty." I didn't know the Lord's answer would come in the form of a man older than my great-granddaddy. His name was Elijah. A 103-year-old man, though everyone in town called him Mr. Eli. He was rich by our standards, owned acres of land, citrus groves, even a big 2-story house with shutters that actually closed. He was shriveled like a dried apple, with hands spotted like the skin of a snake. And yet, he wanted me. I was told the night before my wedding, sitting at the kitchen table while Mama ironed a second-hand white dress someone from church had donated. "Mama," I whispered, "he's old enough to be my great-grandfather." Mama's jaw tightened. "You'll have a roof over your head. You'll have food. You won't end up like me, bent over scrubbing motel toilets. You'll thank me one day." I didn't thank her. Not then. Not ever. The wedding was small, in the dusty little chapel off Main Street. I remember the preacher's voice cracking as he read the vows, as if even he couldn't believe the sight of me, trembling in a white dress, next to that ancient man. His skin smelled of mothballs and whiskey. His grip on my hand was like a claw, squeezing too tight, claiming me. The first night. I can hardly bring myself to say it. He forced me. Not once. Not twice. 12 times before the sun came up. His body may have been old, but his willpower was cruel, relentless. He said it was his right, his duty, his proof that he wasn't too far gone. I cried until I couldn't cry anymore. My body hurt in ways I didn't know a body could hurt. My soul cracked open. And when I tried to tell Mama the next morning, she turned her face away. "You're his wife now," she said. "Do as he says." That was it. No rescue. No tenderness. Just resignation. I wish I could tell you I ran away, that I packed a bag and escaped barefoot down Highway 17 under the moonlight. But the truth is, I stayed. Because where could I go? Girls in those days had no credit cards, no jobs that paid enough to live, no protection from a world that believed marriage was a woman's highest calling, even if that marriage was to a man with one foot already in the grave. And Eli, he wasn't just old. He was mean. His voice carried like thunder through that big empty house. If I didn't smile when his neighbors visited, he pinched the soft skin of my arm until it bruised. If I didn't serve his supper fast enough, he'd slam his cane against the table so hard the dishes rattled. And at night, always at night, he took from me what I never offered. 12 times daily, as if counting was a way of proving his power. Some mornings I would lie in the backyard under the orange trees, staring at the sky, imagining that God could see me through the branches. I would whisper, "Please, take me instead." But the sun kept rising, and I kept waking up in his house, in his bed, trapped. The climax of my suffering came one humid summer night, the kind where the air feels like wet cloth pressed to your face. I was lying on the porch swing, my body aching, my mind drifting somewhere between life and death. Eli stumbled out, drunker than usual, his cane tapping against the wood. "You think you can hide from me?" he growled. Something inside me snapped. For the first time in months, maybe years, I screamed. I screamed so loud the neighbors turned on their porch lights. I screamed like an animal in a trap, clawing at the sky. Eli froze. For a second, I saw fear in his clouded eyes, not of me, but of being exposed. He hissed at me to shut up, dragged me back inside, but that moment of raw rebellion lit a fire in me. From that day on, I stopped being his quiet little doll. I fought. I bit his hand once when he tried to silence me. I scratched my nails down his arm until he bled. And though it didn't free me right away, it planted a seed, the knowledge that I was still alive, still capable of resistance. Now, sitting here at 79, I think about that girl all the time. That broken, terrified 17-year-old. I wish I could wrap her in my arms and tell her she wasn't dirty, she wasn't weak, she wasn't to blame. If you've read this far, bless you. Please, don't let my story disappear into silence again. Leave me a comment, share your thoughts, because every word you give me now is like a balm to the scars I've carried too long. Why did Mama put me in that white dress? Why did she turn her back when I cried? Why she sacrificed her daughter to a man she barely knew? The reason still burns me, even after all these decades. It happened one stormy evening, a Florida summer storm with lightning cracking the sky open like glass. I was washing dishes in the kitchen of that big house when Mama came to visit. She'd aged since I'd last seen her, lines deep as trenches, her back curved from years of scrubbing. "Sit down," she said, her voice heavy. I dried my hands on my apron and sat across from her at the scarred oak table. That's when she told me. "Mr. Eli saved us," she whispered, not looking me in the eye. "When your daddy died, I owed more than I could ever pay. The house, the land, it was slipping through my fingers. Mr. Eli came with an offer. He said he'd clear the debts if you became his wife." Her hands trembled in her lap. "I thought I was giving you a chance. A life better than mine. A chance." That's what she called it. A life. But to me, it was a sentence. Do you know what betrayal tastes like? It's bitter, like biting into an unripe orange. It stays on your tongue no matter how much water you drink. That night, as the storm rattled the shutters, I lay in bed with Eli beside me, wheezing in his sleep, and I wanted to scream. Not just at him, but at Mama. I understood, in some small way, that she thought she was protecting me. Poverty is its own kind of predator. It chews women up, spits them out bent and broken. But still, how could she? How could she sell her child's body like a sack of beans at the market? The abuse didn't stop. In fact, it grew worse after Mama's confession because now I knew I'd been traded like cattle. Eli seemed to sense it, too. He liked to remind me. "Your Mama gave you to me. You're mine, girl." Mine till the grave. He'd say it in that rasping voice, breath thick with bourbon, while his hands dug into my skin. And the truth was, in those years, I believed him. I thought I'd never escape. But God, or maybe fate, has a way of opening cracks in even the thickest walls. The crack came one afternoon in 1965. I was 19 by then, thinner than I should have been, my eyes dull from too many nights without rest. I was out hanging laundry when a car pulled up the long dirt road. Out stepped a young man in uniform. His name was Paul. He was Eli's great-nephew, home on leave from the army. He had kind eyes, a smile that softened the air around him. And for the first time in years, someone looked at me not as property, but as a person. He noticed the bruises. He noticed the way I flinched whenever Eli called for me. One evening, while Eli was passed out in his armchair, Paul leaned close and whispered, "You don't deserve this. You should run. Run." The word was like a seed planted deep inside me. It wasn't easy. The old man had eyes everywhere, and his wealth meant influence. But Paul became my ally. He'd slip me letters when Eli wasn't watching, each one a lifeline. "You're stronger than you think. Hold on. There's a way out." And slowly, I began to believe him. The breaking point came the night Eli collapsed. He'd forced himself on me again, and his body couldn't take it. His face went gray, his chest heaved like a bellows, and I thought, this is it. This is the end. But he lived. Barely. Lying in that hospital bed, tubes snaking from his arms, he still had the gall to squeeze my hand and whisper, "Don't you dare leave me." But in that moment, watching his frail body, I realized something. He wasn't God. He wasn't immortal. He was just a man, a cruel, broken man clinging to power he no longer had. With Paul's help, I left. One dawn, while Eli was still recovering, Paul drove me in his beat-up Chevy out of town. I left behind the orange groves, the sagging house, even Mama. I left everything but the clothes on my back and the scars on my soul. It wasn't a clean escape. The whispers followed me. The shame clung to me. Some folks said I was ungrateful, that I'd abandoned a man who gave me security. But I knew the truth. I had survived hell, and no one could chain me there again. Do you want to know the cruelest twist of all? When Eli finally died at 106, he left me everything. His land, his house, his money. All of it. People said I was lucky. They said I'd won the game. But standing in that empty mansion, the will in my hand, I didn't feel lucky. I felt hollow. No inheritance could pay back the nights he stole, the innocence buried in that bed. I sold the land. I gave away most of the money. I couldn't bear to hold it. It felt like blood money, tainted with every scream I'd swallowed. Now, here I am, telling you this story. Do you see why I call it my shame and my survival? Mama thought she was saving me, but she gave me to a monster. Eli thought he owned me, but I slipped through his fingers in the end. If you're still reading, bless you. Truly. These words aren't easy to write, but they're the truth. And maybe if you've carried your own secret, you'll find the courage to share it too. So please, drop me a comment. Let me know you're out there, listening. Sometimes that's all a woman like me needs, proof that her voice still matters. Now I want to tell you what came after. Because survival doesn't end the day you walk away. In some ways, that's the day the real work begins. When Paul drove me away from that house, the sun was just breaking through the pine trees. I remember the light spilling across the dashboard, painting everything gold. For the first time in years, I felt air in my lungs that wasn't heavy with fear. But freedom came with a price. I didn't know who I was anymore. I was 19 and already felt 90. My body was tired, my mind even more so. The first night I slept in Paul's sister's spare room, I lay awake trembling, waiting for Eli's voice to boom down the hall. Even when I was safe, my body didn't believe it. That's something nobody tells you. Escape doesn't erase the memories. Trauma doesn't stay behind with the walls you run from, it follows you, curls up inside your bones. Paul tried to love me. He truly did. He was gentle, patient, never pushing me for more than I could give. Sometimes he'd just sit by me in silence, letting me breathe. He told me, "You don't owe me anything. Just live. That's enough." But oh, how broken I was. I didn't know how to accept kindness. Every time he reached for my hand, I flinched. Every time he looked at me with softness, I wondered what he wanted in return. Years of being treated like a possession had taught me one cruel lesson: nothing comes free. So I left him, too. Not because he hurt me, but because I couldn't bear to stain him with the shadow that followed me. For a while, I drifted. I worked odd jobs, waitressing, cleaning houses, sewing dresses for church ladies. I slept in rented rooms, sometimes with locks so flimsy I wedged a chair under the knob. I learned to smile at customers, laugh at jokes I didn't find funny, act like I was whole when inside I was crumbling. But you know what? Time has its own kind of mercy. It doesn't heal everything, no, some wounds stay raw forever. But time gives you distance, and with distance comes perspective. By my late 20s, I found myself laughing again. Not the hollow kind I'd practiced, but real laughter, bubbling up when a friend told a silly story. I learned I could look in a mirror without seeing only what had been done to me. Slowly, like sunlight coaxing a flower from the dirt, life began to grow in me again. Then came Henry. He wasn't handsome in the movie star sense. He was plain, with thinning hair and a belly softened by too many biscuits. But Lord, his eyes were kind. He worked at the feed store where I sometimes bought supplies, and he had this way of saying good morning that felt like more than just a greeting. It felt like a promise that maybe mornings could still be good. He courted me gently, never rushing. Brought me peaches when the season came, walked me home from church, asked me questions about my dreams instead of my past. When I finally told him some of what I'd been through, not all, but enough, he didn't look at me with pity. He just held my hand and said, "You're still here. That's what matters." Reader, I married him. And for the first time, it was my choice. Life with Henry wasn't perfect, but it was safe. He never raised his hand to me, never raised his voice in anger. We built a small home together, and though we never had children of our own, I couldn't, after what my body endured. We filled our lives with nieces and nephews, with neighbor kids who called me Aunt Ruth. And when Henry passed, years later, I grieved. But I also thanked God for giving me a taste of what love could be, for showing me that not every man was a monster, not every home a prison. Now, as I sit here with my tea cooling on the table and my hands bent from arthritis, I think about the young girl I was. The 17-year-old in the white dress. The 19-year-old screaming under the stars. The 29-year-old is learning to laugh again. I think about her, and I realize she never really died. She endured. She adapted. She survived. And that, my dear, is the lesson I want to leave with you. No matter what you've been through, no matter who tried to break you, you are still here. Your story isn't over until you say it is. The world may strip you bare, but if you can hold on, just hold on, there's life waiting on the other side. You know, when you carry a secret for a lifetime, it doesn't sit quietly in your chest. It shifts. It grows roots in your bones, it hums in your blood. And some nights, when the world is too still, it whispers, "Tell me. Tell me before it's too late." That's why I'm speaking now. Not because I want pity, not because I want to stir old ghosts, but because silence is the heaviest coffin, and I don't want to be buried with mine. I've lived through storms that nearly drowned me, through nights that seemed endless. But even the darkest night eventually gives way to dawn. That is the gift I want to leave you with, the promise of morning. If you are hurting, if you are hiding, hold on. The light will come, even if you have to crawl toward it. I've told my story not for myself, but for the young girl I once was, and for every girl, or boy, who thinks their voice doesn't matter. It does. You matter. And if these words touched something inside you, if they stirred an ember or lifted a little weight, then don't let it end here. Leave me a comment. Share your thoughts. Subscribe, if you'd like, so that my voice doesn't vanish into the noise of the world. Sometimes the smallest gestures, your words, your listening ear, become lifelines for people like me. My name was once Ruth, the girl in the white dress, the girl who was sold and silenced. But tonight, I chose a new name, Survivor. Not because the past is gone, but because I have lived through it, and I am still here. So I'll close with this: I am not defined by what was taken from me. I am defined by what I kept, my breath, my story, my soul. And now, at last, I lay the secret down. I let it rest. And I step, trembling but free, into the light of my own rebirth.